Hello, in this video we will understand about the anterior cortical tract, the anterior cortical pathway and the corticobulbar pathway, the head movement of a head. So the anterior corticospinal tract is involved the lateral and anterior cortical tract, which that movement of trunk and proximal part of the limb, but we will focus on the anterior and lateral cortical spinal tract. While the corticobulbar pathway, we will also understand about how it is possible for the movement of head. And the corticospinal tract is used for the balance, etc. So the upper motor neuron is the not true motor neuron. So we will understand about the upper motor neuron pathway, but is essential for true lower motor neuron. Remember, the upper motor neuron originate from gray matter of the brain, travel to axon. Let's begin to understand via a cross section of the brain. First, I will draw a cerebrum. Cerebrum is the primary motor cortex, the primary sensory motor cortex. In this way here you can see this is the thalamus and the internal capsule are present. This is the midbrain, cerebellum, pons, medulla and cervical spinal cord as well as lumbar spinal cord. Let's understand about after the sensation, the sensory neuron, ascending neuron, which that will travel from the receptor to the sensory neuron, ascending neuron, to the gray matter of the cerebrum. This gray matter is the primary motor cortex, remember, will lead to travel this axon to this is the upper motor neuron. This is the primary motor cortex, and in this way upper motor neuron travel down toward the midbrain and the cerebral peduncle or cerebral nuclei, which that is involved for the anterior corticospinal tract. This go into the 90% corticospinal axon, decussate the crossover to the corticolateral opposite side of the medulla. This is the corticolateral pathway. In this way, the 90% the corticospinal axon decussate the crossover. In this way, the right side will hold the left side of the body of the from the brain, and the left will hold or control the right side of the body. This is the lumbar spinal cord. Remember, the this lateral corticospinal tract and the anterior spinal corticospinal tract. The impulse for moves down descending tract of spinal cord will lead to synapse with lower motor neuron with muscle of skeleton, and the innervation with muscle for glands of the body or other the responses. So the planning, the voluntary movement, and basically it will innervation with muscle for movement or glands of the body. So the movement basically is target to the muscle and response, and it is give the response as a planning, the voluntary movement, regulate the posture, the balance, muscle tone, reflexive movements, and head and trunk movement. Anyhow, this head and trunk movement involve for the upper motor neuron, the corticobulbar pathway. We will understand now. So remember, this cervical spinal cord, which that will give the response, and the lateral corticospinal tract and anterior corticospinal tract is involved for the balance, etc. Here is I am drawing the picture, the cross section of the cerebral region of the brain. This is the corticobulbar pathway we will discuss now. This is the use for the movement of head and control of the head. This is the head and neck area for the primary motor cortex. Will lead to upper motor neuron will travel down after the sensation due to the stretching of the muscle or other will lead to go into the midbrain and lower midbrain to the mid pons and the lower pons. In this way, the low medulla will follow the medullary cord junction. Anyhow, this will travel down here in the midbrain. The lateral pathway will lead to cranial nerve 3, which that is involved, and later corticobulbar tract. While this the medial corticobulbar tract is involved for the descending down more further the lower midbrain, and in this way the upper motor neurons will go travel down and the corticobulbar tract will go down. In this way the cranial nerve 4 is involved for the give the signal as a lateral corticobulbar tract, while on the other hand here is the cranial nerve 5 with the mid pons, which that is the lateral corticobulbar tract is involved. Remember, this is the cranial nerves 7 and 6 is involved the lower pons as a lateral, while the anterior descending upper motor neuron will travel down, and in this way here is the cranial nerve 10 and cranial nerve 12 is involved for the lateral corticobulbar tract for the from the lower medulla to control the brain as a response. And this is the medullary cord, the junction, and this is the spinal nerve 11 is involved for the control from the medullary cord junction, and this is the traveling down the motor neuron. Upper motor neuron will lead to true motor neuron as a neuromuscular junction to give the response by the depolarization of the muscle cell, depolarization of the myofiber. And now let's begin to understand the summarization. The sensory neurons will travel toward the dorsal root of ganglion, and in this will go into the thalamus to the brain and move back via a motor neuron, lead to response. And this is the spinal cord and the motor neuron, and the ventral horn of ganglia are present. This basically the motor neuron is especially the second motor neuron is the true motor neuron, because it will be bind with the synapse, the neuromuscular junction with the muscle for give the response. Anyhow, we have discussed about the anterior corticospinal tract and lateral corticospinal tract, and corticobulbar pathway is control the head region. The basically head and proximal part of limb is involved, and the trunk region and the distal part of limb. So remember, we have discussed the two pathway, the two tract, the anterior corticospinal tract and lateral corticospinal tract, as well as corticobulbar pathway, lateral and medial corticobulbar tract. So I hope you make sense about that. The video was about the anterolateral corticospinal tract and the corticobulbar pathway, the corticobulbar tract, which that is used for the control of movement of head and the movement of trunk and proximal part of the limb. I hope you make sense. If you like my video, please make sure to subscribe, like and share. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.